Welcome to Happeo Unmuted, the podcast where we speak openly about what it really takes to connect people at work. From internal comms and knowledge sharing to the messiness of change and the rise of AI, we go beyond best practices to unpack what's working, what's not, and what's worth rethinking. Our host, Bourgeault-Trickey, has spent over 10 years in internal comms, building and launching intranets for organizations in telecoms and finance. He now leads client services at Happeo, where he's helped over 120 businesses across the globe create and grow engaging digital workplaces that drive organizational goals and objectives. If you care about how people in your organization share, learn, and adapt, this is your show. And if you're looking for a modern digital HQ, you can find us at happeo.com.
Welcome to Unmuted, the podcast where we explore the messy, brilliant, and occasionally unfiltered world of internal comms, knowledge sharing, and digital transformation. I'm your host and Happeo's Principal of Client Services, Bourgeault-Trickey. Today's guest is Priya Bates. Priya is President of Inner Strength Communication and co-founder of A Leader Like Me, and she's known for turning internal comms from an afterthought into a driver of culture and change. With more than 25 years in the field, she's an award-winning communications professional whose work has helped organizations shift from tactical messages to strategic impact. We're lucky to have her on today. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
glad to be here.
Totally. So I just want to start off with our sort of unmuted moment question, and we like to kind of open it up with. So I wanted to ask, what's one moment that made you fall in love with the work you do or totally question your life choices?
Totally question your life choices. That's really funny. I actually can talk about that moment or that period of time, if you will, right? I had traditionally worked in external communication, starting in sales communication when at the dawn of digital PCS. So when we were going from analog cell phones to digital phones, and I was speaking with customer service reps and stores and retailers who sold our products and justifying why they needed to focus on us versus the competitors out there. And then I got this job in the tech industry where I was managing marketing, sales, and corporate communication. And that's a wide range of stuff, right? Internal and external. And I had this moment when we realized that the tech industry had just gone through its boom and then it was in its bust. We had to completely rethink how we sold products from a technology perspective. And because I was in charge of communicating to the sales floor, we were educating them. I was working with executives on their speaking. I was taking a look at external communication, but I had this opportunity with the internal employees and especially the sales floor to help them rethink how they sold products. And it was this light bulb moment where I thought, oh my goodness, this is actually working. And we're delivering extremely well, and that we could make a bigger difference from the inside out than we could with the press releases I was sending out and all the PR I was doing. It was really about recreating the brand, but trying to figure out how we deliver that brand promise through our employees. And it worked because our Canadian operations delivered and met its goals, while the US operations that weren't thinking that way weren't. To the point that our executive team, the 4 executive team members, were actually elevated and were put in charge of the North American operations because of that success that we were had on the ground. And it was that piece where I thought, oh my goodness, what am I doing differently? It's this piece of internal communication.
Oh, that's great. That's such a very tangible moment.
Yeah.
It's funny how like the technology side of things and communications, they don't necessarily seem obvious, but there's always that sort of hand in hand. I think a lot of it has to do with the change that's constantly happening with technology, and that change just requiring, communications to either frame it or, give people the ability to understand what the impacts are going to be or how does it benefit them and all that kind of stuff, right? So,
And it's ultimately working with organizations, because that became the kind of narrative that came through my career when I was in-house, which was I started working with organizations who were going through transformational change, whether it was a switch from analog to digital phones, whether it's, trying to decide realizing that we couldn't actually just sell the hardware and make money. We actually had to think about peripherals and add-ons and accessories and services. So a different way of thinking. It was working with an organization going through transformation and amalgamation and thinking about what do we look like together, 8 different organizations that all of a sudden had to function like one. Right? It's all moments of transformational change where how do we bring a workforce together so that we're seeming seamless from a client perspective and a customer perspective.
Yeah, and bringing everybody together and creating those brand ambassadors, as you kind of mentioned, it's sort of a
Yes.
great actual transition to the next question, which I wanted to ask, which is around, like, what's the hardest thing about internal communications that no one talks about? I definitely have gone through those challenges myself at
Yeah.
some point, but I'm kind of curious, like, do you see it in the same realm, or is there maybe something else that stood out?
I think the hardest thing about internal communication is, and that we need to understand as professionals and practitioners, is that we need to believe in ourselves and we need to work on ourselves
Mm.
first. And that's the hard part because we've spent a lot of time. I've been doing this for almost 30 years, dedicated to internal communications for 25. And we spent a lot of time whining and complaining about why don't we get the resources? Why don't we get the respect? Why don't we get the recognition that we deserve? Because we have this big opportunity. And I realize more and more that the issue isn't about capability and capacity as much as it is about courage and confidence. It's having the courage to say no to the things that don't matter. It's having the confidence in what we are able to deliver and being accountable to those real results, not the outputs, not the clicks and the reads. It really is about what are we why are, how are we actually creating the change for the organization? How are we contributing to the bottom line results? How are we engaging employees so they're actually delivering on those promises? And that's the thing that we're afraid of. And it's interesting that it's almost as if I do a lot of research in this space. And whenever I'm saying to internal communication professionals and practitioners around the world, come take this survey, and a small smidgen of them do. Because I don't know if we want to come to terms with where we're weak. And until we really understand that, until we understand what we need to improve ourselves, it's gonna be really hard to convince others
Yeah, there's
of our
definitely
value.
it's as if, like, there's a need for this facade, like you mentioned before, around the idea of confidence and being able to kind of put yourself out there. But that's sort of like the last line almost of being fully able to commit to
Yeah.
being open about it or being able to see what's going on there. For me, it's
What
a
what what I always say the definition of insanity, my favorite quote, Albert Einstein, is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That's what I wanna stop, internal communication professionals, from doing is, wanting different results, but not being willing to do things differently.
right. Yeah. Yeah, it's curious to see with, again, with all this technology, what's being on offer for us potentially as it relates to measurement. So I think that there's
Mhm.
a lot of opportunity there, not only from like a practitioner standpoint, but also from a tools standpoint to sort of get it to that next level of evolution and being able to see more of that value more tangibly, right? So.
Absolutely.
Mhm. I guess maybe we'll transition a little bit here. So the next side of things is sort of thinking about the current state of internal comms. And so I wanted to ask around, like, what's the biggest communications challenge you're seeing across organizations right now? You do a lot of consulting, and so
Yes.
what's actually driving it beneath the surface?
The biggest challenge is kind of the process we go through. So I see so many organizations who, they do their engagement surveys, they do their safety surveys, and it doesn't matter what survey they're doing. There's always a question about communication, and there's they one of the conclusions is we need to communicate better, right? Whenever something goes wrong, top 3 reasons it went wrong was we failed to
Mhm.
communicate, right? So they take that finding, that discovery, and their solution immediately is to jump to a tactic or the delivery of a tactic. So we don't communicate well, we need to improve communication, and their first response to that is let's hire the most junior person or assign it to the HR rep or the marketing rep or the administrator. It's amazing how many administrators are being then told, we need to communicate better, so let's start a newsletter. Let's start sending emails more often. They don't actually think about, what are people really asking for? How do we turn this organization on so that it communicates better as a whole? And that's like, they don't start with the strategy, they start with the tactics. So think about that. You get the administrator or a junior person who doesn't have anybody to aspire to, it doesn't have anybody to learn from on how to do this strategically. How long do you think it takes them to become that senior strategist who actually impacts the business outcomes? It may never happen. It may
Mhm.
never happen. And then they're frustrated about why communication doesn't work. And it comes up every year. For me.
Do you find that people are willing to kind of like sit down and discuss strategy when you sort of bring it up or set the table around the topic, or is it still a little bit of a mystery for a lot of organizations out there?
It's still a mystery. I think a lot of people don't understand the what internal communication is capable of doing. Filling those gaps, I always say, turning words to actions, values to behaviors, strategy to results, and those brand promises into employee experiences and customer experiences. They don't see it that way. They see it as a set of tactics. They
Mhm.
don't see those connections and they don't see the results, right? And that's really a tough. So when I see an organization willing to spend money on the research, actually talking to their employees and
Right.
finding out where the gaps exist. And we could look holistically at the system. So when we do an internal communication audit, it's not cheap, but when we do it, we can find out what are the channels that are working and not working. What is relevant? What's the information that's missing? Where do gaps exist? What is the role that leadership need to play in communication? We actually look at that holistically and we can then say, here's the roadmap. Here's what you need to focus on. Here's the basics you need to start with. Here's the quick wins. But then here's the long-term investments you need to make in order to really drive the organization and let it run at its best. It's like really there's this opportunity to create limited disruption and make things run smoothly. When organizations communicate well holistically, it feels easy. I can't describe it. Cultures
Mhm.
feel good. People feel understood. They feel heard. They understand what they need to do. They
Mhm.
believe in the cause, right? Like all of those things happen, and that contributes to actually delivering on the results.
Yeah, you mentioned something there around sort of like the culture and making it feel easy almost. But you also mentioned the idea of sort of the knee jerk reaction of like, well, let's just send out a tactic, or
Yeah.
let's put it sort of in some sort of placeholder there to kind of solve for that. But I also know that you do a bit of review around tools as part of your work. I've seen some of your
Mm.
articles there, and so I'm kind of curious your take on it from a tools lens. So, like, do you think that tools can fix culture, or is that just sort of a convenience excuse, essentially?
Yeah, I think the for those, I'll age myself here, but the way I think about tools is I always use this Field of Dreams analogy. For those of you who haven't watched the movie, it's a movie that starred Kevin Costner, and the one line that was a big deal in the movie is, "If you build it, they will come." And I feel like that's a lot of the time the way we treat tools. That as long as we flipped on a switch and we've said this tool is available, everybody will magically know exactly how to use it and how to use it effectively. And it'll actually contribute to the efficiencies that we brought the tool in for in the first place. But there's again, a process that we need to implement. We've seen this with Microsoft 365, right? With any of the Microsoft tools, they exist. They flipped on the switch, but are people using them? Right? And are they using them well? Are they using them the way they're supposed to be using them? So even those tools that exist aren't being used to their full potential. How do you expect something new that you're now bringing in without that support, without thinking about how we use the tool, without the training? without the governance in place, without the thinking of how do you keep that tool relevant on a regular basis and filled with content that matters to employees, and how do you measure success in a way that's not just how many people clicked on it, but actually think about why and think about how it actually contributed to that outcome and organizational impact. It's really thinking about things holistically.
Hmm. Yeah, it's funny the number of clients that I work with as far as implementing a tool like Happeo, and I have to sort of bring it to their attention. The adoption planning is essentially the core of this entire
Yeah.
project. But
Yeah.
no,
It's the combination. So there's adoption,
mhm,
and then it's maintenance,
of course, yeah,
right? So
yeah,
here's how we launch it and
mhm,
teach people how to use it.
yeah,
But then this is how we keep it alive and relevant and effective and efficient, so
yeah.
that we're constantly having that conversation about why this tool is making a difference in the things that matter to the organization,
Sure. Yeah, adopting governance or adopting measurement practices or all that kind of stuff.
or
Yeah,
compliance, like
compliance.
legal compliance. Like some of those tools will allow people to check the box saying they read something.
Yeah.
That actually contributes to somebody, if they're sued or something goes wrong, they can say, well, that person went through the training, or at least said they did. Right?
Yeah,
So there's things that matter to those leaders,
for sure.
that we need to connect the dots on more.
I guess maybe a good follow-up for this topic of tools is like, what do you actually see making tools usable inside an organization? Or like, what do vendors always seem to miss, it seems, for you?
Part of it is allowing access to a variety of people to actually put content in the tools, right? So I think that the more we don't have internal communication, the small team completely responsible for content and being a huge gatekeeper, it actually turns on those tools in a way that people own it and feel ownership for it. So this opportunity for people to contribute to the conversation, comment, support, the opportunity for people to share, like if there's tools that are out there that allow an internal campaign to give permission to share some of that content or parts of that content externally, you've actually almost turned employees into those ambassadors, because they then have access to their social media to share a new product or a new thing that's come out. I think that the opportunity for departments to own their own information, right? Teams actually allows you to do that in a little way, but then it's all separated, and it reinforces the silos. So how do we bring that together
Mhm.
in a way that there is the highlights are fed up, so people are aware of what those various teams are doing, right?
Right.
So it's
Mm.
those connections, and having people inside each of those different department silos, not only given the permission to share, but the training to share it properly, the guidance, and then that from a governance perspective, creating some permissions where it's relevant on the areas that you own, so that you can say this is being done consistently.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's always a bit of a challenge of give and take there. I've sort of had it where I've had to work inside of large organizations, and you're trying to give people as much as you can, but at the same time, you need to kind of keep an eye on people.
Mhm.
So it's
But the
it's a,
tools allow you to do that,
the
right?
tools need to.
There are approval processes put
Mhm.
in place where those are relevant, and
Yep.
where those we need them. Like it's especially if something's coming on a homepage,
Mhm.
right? But also using the tools like Active Directory. Most of the tools, the more enhanced tools that are out there, like Happeo, use the data,
Yep.
right? Whether it's Active Directory from Microsoft, whether it's HRIS systems, whatever it is that
Mhm.
provide you with the fields that allow you to target information. We're not connecting those dots very well either.
Mhm. Yeah. I guess it goes back to that idea of the upskilling piece you were sort of mentioning before, right?
Yeah.
So, I guess maybe another one just to round out this state of internal comms is what's something you wish more execs understood about the employee experience generally?
That there are moments that matter, that I think that there's more work that we need to do on the employee life cycle and how we connect with people throughout that life cycle, right? And that life cycle starts from when we're advertising, like the when we're recruiting people, what are their expectations? What are the expectations we're building? When we're orienting them in-house, when we're managing performance and training and recognition, and then when we're exiting people, because those individuals, especially if you're a retailer, or they are possibly your customers, they're possibly your shareholders, right? That relationship doesn't necessarily end. So I'd like to see them really think about the employee life cycle. And when HR takes care of the employee life cycle, they're thinking about it from a transactional perspective. But I'd like to layer on top of that, like, what do people need to do and what do they need to understand? But then layer on top of that a communications perspective on how to make sure people are engaged through the process and actually contributing to the business and supporting the business.
Yeah, I'd argue in the way that we were just talking about sort of the tools side of things, there's definitely a correlation there of sort of establishing a standard flow of the life
Correct.
cycle of the employee, right, as they go through, right? Where
And
the
making it easier, right? So
Totally.
that you can automate some of those processes
Mhm.
so that it actually creates consistency along that life cycle.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm kind of excited in the way that the AI functionalities now allow for more of an adaptive experience. So it's a
Mhm.
less of like a one size fits all employee experience and more like everybody gets their own unique experience as a person as they kind of go through these experiences. So,
Awesome. And yeah, exactly. And from a
mm,
targeting perspective, what's
mhm,
things that everybody needs to understand? What are those foundations? And then what are the things that are unique to those groups and those individuals?
totally. Yeah. Maybe we'll shift a little bit towards the leadership and change side of things, maybe for the conversation. So the question I had was, what separates leaders who elevate internal comms from those who intentionally hold it back?
Um, I
Sorry,
don't think
sorry, I meant to say unintentionally hold it back.
unintentionally. I was just gonna say, I don't think anybody intentionally holds
Yeah,
things
yeah,
back.
totally.
I haven't seen leaders who are intentionally saying, "Let's just screw up, screw up employees and make sure they don't have any information." There's very few of those leaders,
Yeah, yeah,
right? I think that that we haven't done a great job as a profession and discipline, showcasing what is possible when things work well.
mhm,
Right. Because I've said this to so many people that when internal communication does their job really, really well, we're kind of invisible,
yeah,
right? Things don't happen.
mhm,
And so people just assume that the strategies were great. The values were great. All those foundations that were built by those leaders, the direction that the organization is going are amazing. Boy, are we awesome. But they don't actually understand that communication is helping connect those dots through awareness and understanding and helping people understand what they need to do and and driving the belief and the pride in the organization. Those are all touch points. And I think that that we need to be better at kind of educating uh, leaders on those connections. And what I see, it's really great, is that when leaders have seen what good looks like and they understand that part of the role was communication, helping fill those gaps, they move on to other organizations and they want more of that,
right, yep,
more of what worked.
mhm. Yeah, is there like where do you see the leaders unintentionally undermining communication efforts, even when they think they're supporting them? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, probably focusing on the things that don't matter.
Mhm,
Wordsmithing,
right,
um, uh, uh, having to creating games of broken telephone
mhm,
because they've established hierarchies. So if you do not, one of the things that I realize is if I'm writing for a leader, I
mhm,
need direct access to that leader in order to capture what matters to them, their voice. Often, what we have is people in the middle working through the hierarchy, and
sure,
by the time it gets to the communication professionals, if that's the junior person who's heard it third or fourth hand, it definitely is a interpreted and a game of broken telephone, because the people who are sitting in front, like an HR professional who's sitting in front of that leader, does not know how to bring that communication, what the leader's intent is, to life.
right,
And there's nothing better than that relationship when I have a leader who I've had direct access to, and I'm writing for them and using my skills, what I've been trained to do, in a way that really matters. Um, we'd get to a point like with presidents and CEOs to a point where I'd just say, this is what you need to be communicating, and this is what it sounds like. And I'd literally get, okay, good to go.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's sufficient. But the games of broken telephone where you've had people insert the 12 people who have to approve something on behalf of one leader, right? That it becomes a make work project, and then people don't want anything to do with it.
Are you kind of seeing those same trends around things like change management? So like organizations sort of overlooking the barriers or the challenges that they're putting in place by having that sort of approval by committee almost?
Yeah, that too. The thing that I'd always say with change managers, people who are trained in change management, ProSci, change management processes, is they are process driven. They know exactly what's happening to whom and when. What they forget is, so they know the details, but they get so caught up in the details that they don't actually think of how does that land in order to drive action. And that's the role that, that communication professional can play in the middle, to say, here's what you want to happen, but how do we actually make this digestible, clear enough in order to drive the end result that you're looking for. I had a leader, a strategic leader who wasn't a communication professional, but I'd love her line. She'd say, write your novel on your own time.
Right.
Right? Because you think about the detail that's required at the operational level, right? The accountants, the CEOs who are looking at financials, the operational leaders who are saying this is all the detail of what has to happen, and they're overwhelmed with all of that, but they understand it. And then they want to put that in front of employees.
Yeah.
And the employees don't need all of that information. They just need to know, what do I need to know right now to deliver on what you're asking? Like that's the translation that needs to occur.
It's a great sort of consideration for what I was going to just ask you, which is sort of like, if employees are acting in ways that leaders don't expect, how do you diagnose whether it's a communications issue, a knowledge gap, or something deeper?
We ask them. We ask them. Like the one thing I'll say for change management is they have processes in place. So they've got change leadership forums. They have conversations about change readiness. All of that stuff, the process is there. But what gets lost is in how they interpret what that means.
Sure.
And that requires a connection to the culture and a connection to the colleagues, right? So that we actually understand, yes, this is what's happening, but what does that mean and how do we change it? Through very, very clear direction for employees and clear conversation.
I'll often ask clients when I'm working with them, like, do you have an internal network of champions, or do you have some sort of system of being able to tap into peer groups and sort of get a sense of how things are happening? The other thing that we always talk about is sort of surveys. And there's always this talk, it's sort of like bubbling in the background, is this survey fatigue concept.
Yeah.
I'm more of an opinion in that I feel it's a challenge in the sense that those surveys are sort of falling by the wayside of what the results and the outcomes are. It's sort of like, I'm going to ask a bunch of questions and then do nothing to follow up with.
So we always say, and I won't take the credit for this firm, and I can't remember who said it first, but it's not survey fatigue, it's lack of action fatigue.
Totally. Right.
Right. Yeah. And so that's what we see, is a lot of organizations say, you always ask me the question, but you never do anything. And in some cases, the organizations have done things, but they've never looked back and told employees what they've done.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a communication gap. Right. That has created a lack of distrust, or created distrust. Right. And a lack of action, or the perception of lack of action. But they don't connect those dots and get credit for what they've actually done.
It's a great way to transition to the next segment, where I wanted to talk about sort of like reinforcement, measurement, and maturity overall. I wanted to ask, where you're in your work, you talk about the need for consistent reinforcement, not just repeated messaging. So what does effective reinforcement actually look like in practice from your perspective?
Yeah, I think there's that old adage that we have to repeat a message 7 times in order for it to be heard. But I'm questioning that. Like, does it
Mhm.
mean that we just have to send the same message through 7 different places or 7 different times? Then you
Mhm.
get eye rolling right, of employees, and you already told me that.
Right.
But what I want to see is other things. I want to see reinforcement through the actions of the organization and how leaders actually implement things so that they're showcasing what good looks like. I want to see recognition. So we should be highlighting what's being done right. I want to see results. So you're connecting what we asked you to do with the results that actually happen. So
Mhm.
we're highlighting that with employees, right? So those are all things that actually are kind of repeating, but not saying the same thing over and over again. We're actually not just telling, we're
Mhm.
showing, and then we're showcasing why that matters, right? So really follow, how do you repeat in a way that that makes sense and resonates and proves that what we're doing is working.
Yeah, it's. I'd love to get your take on this because I'm sort of. I keep going back to this idea of micro surveys or pulse surveys and making it standardized almost within organizations. So, sort of a case of like, do you understand what just came to you in this note, or do you feel ready
Yes.
for this change, or are you excited about what's going to be happening? And just having that as a standard way to sort of validate with people.
I
Uh,
love that idea. Like, and I think that with those pulses, what I've seen work really well in organizations is that you're mixing up the hard hitting stuff with some of the fun stuff.
sure. Yeah.
Right? Because what we're also trying to do is build culture and build connection and build community and make sure people understand that they matter, not just what the work of the business is.
Mhm. Yeah. No, that's great. And I guess the other angle here is like sometimes even the uncomfortable results can be really valuable. Like just this idea, I
Absolutely.
think you said it before, like people might be afraid potentially of measurement, but it's only when you know that it failed that you can go to the executives and say, I know something you don't, like we need to do something about this, right? And here's what we need
Measurement.
to do about it.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Measurement is our biggest opportunity. And we
mhm,
have to, the way we start is telling people what didn't happen and what went
mhm,
wrong.
sure.
And I know that, when an executive um, hires me, and it's amazing, it's more often that I get hired by an executive, not or HR, not necessarily communication, which
Mhm.
which is too bad, which is I'd like to see more communication take the credit for my work, because that's what happens if it's an executive or an HR leader who's frustrated with what's going on in house, and then they, instead of talking to the communication team, they come out to me.
Yeah,
When things go well, who gets the credit for that?
sure.
The executive, not the communication person who says we need help and we need help to actually drive the change that we're looking at,
Yeah.
right? So I'd say from a metrics perspective, when things go wrong, you know, uh, my little joke is that it's not executive management, it's ego management that we're involved in. And so I think about this it's one of the key points that we bring out. We're hearing about email noise from all of our
Yeah.
every survey always says
Sure.
there's too much noise, there's too much stuff, we can't get our heads above it.
Yeah.
But then when we have metrics, when we're actually able to measure, what are people opening, what are they acting upon, which leaders are the most successful, is it just because it's the CEO sending something out that people open it,
Hmm.
or are there other leaders who are actually resonating with
Right.
employees? What are people looking at?
Hmm.
What is relevant to them? Which leaders did they get excited by? And then if we can actually say, why is that leader writing things more succinctly?
Hmm.
Are they the ones getting the support? So how do we teach they're not every executive can have a full-time communication perspective person dedicated to them, but
Yeah.
maybe we can teach them how to do things the same way.
Sure. Yeah.
And we can teach practices that will
Yeah.
help them be more successful. So we actually have to say, here's the comparison. Here's what worked, here's what didn't. I do this with projects all the time. I always say to communication professionals who are trying to get the credibility to say, find one leader who wants you to help with their project from beginning to end, who brought you in early,
Mhm.
who's willing to bring you in early, who works with you through the strategic planning process. We actually deliver something and and we measure results and they were off the charts. Now
Mhm.
we've got a case study. So we can say, this is what worked and this is what didn't, and this is why.
Mhm.
It's that narrative that we build, the story that we build around what we deliver and why it worked this time and it didn't work last time, or your project was more successful than the other project. That's how I built teams inside, like inside organizations, because we were able to, people said, I want more of that. I want
Right.
people who can help me be successful. And that success is tied to business results. So
Mhm.
then it justifies spending the money.
Yeah. When you work with organizations, what outcomes do you find are the most important to measure, but maybe are often overlooked or not necessarily taken into consideration?
The big thing, the what matters to the organization,
Mhm.
right? So I have a client who got in touch with me because of a safety audit. So
Sure.
a safety survey, a safety audit identified communication as an issue.
Mhm.
Instead of doing the knee-jerk reaction and hiring somebody to write a newsletter, they said, let's find out, we want our communication to be best in class. So let's find somebody who understands what internal communication should look like.
Yeah.
So we were able to do the audit. We were able to provide guidance. We identified what managers needed to do better. That organization now has won the safety record for the entire global organization for 2 years in a row. So then the conversation becomes, what are they doing differently
Mhm.
compared to the other? And so this organization has brought me in to train, do assessments for leaders, like in different parts of their company, because they see what is possible and they're seeing the safety record get better. So
Mhm.
safety is this is a big organization. Safety is the number one. It's part of their values. It's part of how they measure success. It's part
Right.
of it. It's connected to, when safety goes wrong, it's connected to huge costs from a liability perspective.
Mhm.
Right? Those are things that matter. If I'm talking about a code of conduct, I worked with my previous employer and two of its subsequent, like, connected organizations on recreating their code of conducts. And what we asked ourselves is, why are we doing this? Well, we want to reduce calls. That's time. We want to reduce liability and lawsuits that are a result of our employees doing things incorrectly and not following the policies and codes of conduct. Those were the conversations we should be having.
Right.
So I ended up spending 6 months. Oh, it was painful. 6 months with 16 lawyers of 3 different organizations working through what their codes of conduct look like,
Oh, yeah.
connecting it to their values, and then being very clear on what does that look like, and then thinking about how those codes of conduct came to life during orientation and through the annual update, so that
Mhm.
every year people got trained on the code of conduct. So and then the ultimate measure would be, did we actually see reduced calls? Did we actually see reduced incidents?
Yeah.
And how much did that save the organization?
Mhm. Yeah, it's really funny when I do the implementations with clients. I'll often bring that up as part of one of our first workshops is goals and objectives. Like aligning on what you want to do. And
Yeah.
I'll always start with like, okay, what are the goals and objectives of the organization? And
Yes.
you can see that they kind of, it's like I hit them sideways, and they're like, wait a second, and it's like,
Which
well,
is amazing, isn't it?
yeah,
Because if we're not here to help make the employees actually deliver, and help them deliver and understand what the goals are,
mhm,
then why are we here?
yeah, that's it.
Right? It shouldn't be the make it pretty stuff. It shouldn't be, let's just write the story. It should be connected to driving the culture and the results of the organization.
Yep. Maybe just to kind of loop back to what we were talking about before, you noticed that the career path for internal communicators is changing a bit, and that some of the critical skills still aren't being developed early enough. What are the biggest gaps that you're seeing today as far as the people you've been working with?
It's that piece I was talking about earlier, which is, you're hiring somebody junior who doesn't have any experience, and they are not getting supported by somebody to make them more strategic quickly.
Mm,
And it's possible. It's just that there's a gap, like a bit of a generational gap that exists right now. So if you've got somebody junior coming in without the support and build to make them more strategic, and then you've got other organizations that are building that, are larger organizations that have that succession and career succession path
yeah.
in place, there's a
Mhm.
very different way that they're learning. right? But there's an opportunity to fill that gap by bringing in training and consulting, allowing them to be part of a professional association, helping them, get the training that they need, and perhaps the mentoring that they need, so that they can get up to speed very quickly. Just the fact that an organization invests in that makes them understand what is possible, and you see those changes happen very quickly once you fill that gap. But it's hard to do with a junior person or somebody who doesn't have the skills, just left on their own to do their best.
Absolutely, yeah. It's as if, like, if you're going to go about it from a cost savings measure or whatever reasoning that you have from a sort of an executive decision standpoint, there's still something to be said about just continuous investment and development within that person, right? So
You get what you pay for.
exactly, yeah.
You get what you pay for, and an organization should understand that,
Mhm.
and then not wonder why communication went wrong, why employees didn't understand, why they didn't deliver what they needed to deliver, why they didn't believe in and provide their effort, and why they weren't aligned. Because alignment is a big issue right now. That when you have so many people who are divided, how do we align them against the organizational
Yeah.
values, strategy, mission, vision, policies, codes of conduct, all of those things?
Mhm. And I suppose that communications investment or development could, extend beyond just that individual that maybe you're hiring for that role, and you look at it from a leadership perspective or
Exactly. And well, because you're creating alignment across the board. Because one of the biggest things that, when we're doing our audits, we can discover is the alignment because people don't understand, or is it because the things are inconsistent? One document says one thing, one document says another. An a leader says one thing but does something different.
right.
Like those things are disconnects that impact what employees really believe is going on.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Right? And what is allowed and what isn't allowed.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on our time here, so what I wanted to do is maybe just finish off with our last segment being a bit more like a rapid fire reflection.
Sure.
So I'll sort of ask you and look for sort of short and simple responses from you. So the first one I've got here is, if you could give communicators one tough truth to help them grow, what would it be?
Do the assessment that I've provided to understand where their own gaps are.
Okay. And what's one thing internal comms pros can do tomorrow that their future selves will thank them for?
Ask questions.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't just go away and deliver what
Yeah.
you've been asked to deliver.
Yeah. I
If
had it
you're
run.
if you're an order taker, I always use the waitress or waiter analogy.
Sure.
You're never going to invite the waiter who takes your order and just delivers what you asked for to the table to sit down with you and discuss what's possible.
Yep. I like that. I had a communications manager one time mention that we're almost like federal marshals, that we have to kind of act like you're able to go wherever and ask whatever questions you have because it matters
Yeah,
to everybody, right?
exactly.
Mhm. What's something in the comms world you think we need to finally say out loud that's been muted for too long? A little shameless plug, but
That we are part of a system for success. It's not just us in a vacuum.
right. Yeah. hmm Can't lift the whole company on your back, right?
Yeah.
So, well, really appreciate that. That was great. I feel like we just got a masterclass in what it really means to build trust, drive change, and elevate communications beyond tactics. If those of you in the audience took something away from today's episode, a new idea, a question you want to explore, or just a reminder of why this work matters, please share it with a leader, colleague, or your team. That's how you can help make good communications grow across the world. And if you want more conversations like this, follow Happeo Unmuted wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks again to Priya for joining us. Really appreciate you having the time with us today.
You're welcome.
And thanks to everybody out there for tuning in. Until next time, keep communicating and connecting.